guys ready? Okay, we'll call to order a regular meeting of the Planning Commission. Can we go ahead and have the roll call?
Sure. If everybody remembers to turn on their mics when they get ready to talk. Chairperson Jim Sawtelle.
Here.
Vice Chairperson Robert Momartz.
Yes, here.
Commissioners Joanne Eaton, Phyllis Sarden here, Mark Lasis, Jerry Malia,
Here.
Jason Reese,
Here.
Tom Ricker, Anthony Stewart,
Here.
Planner Fred Fox, Attorney Liz Cross, Associate Planner Stephen Williams.
Here.
Okay, thank you. Next item is approval of the agenda. Has everybody had a chance to take a look at it? Any changes to the agenda? Can we have a motion to approve it?
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
All right, Commissioner Malia.
I'll second.
Second, Commissioner Momartz. All those in favor? Okay, motion's carried. Next item is public comment on consent agenda or non-agenda items. I don't see any public presence, so I'm assuming there is none. The next item is on the consent agenda, approval of the minutes of the November 17, 2015 meeting. Has everybody had a chance to take a look at the minutes?
Yes.
Any changes to the minutes?
Not seen.
I think I just caught a couple typos on
This is the agenda.
the third page when it's talking about the discussion questions that the commissioners had directed to the developer about the plan development plan amendment number 3. There's reference to Commission Reese. I think it should be Commissioner Reese and Commission Stewart, which should read Commissioner Stewart. Those are the only changes I had.
I did have a couple. I did notice that on the questions by commissioners were as follows. The third bullet item, it says Commissioner Lasis said along the same street with the parking. That I believe that was Commissioner Reese. I believe I was the one that asked that as well. So I think that whole section was me asking that.
Okay, good, thank you. And then I see further down in that paragraph again, it says Commission Reese rather than Commissioner Reese.
Okay.
Okay, any other changes? Subject to those changes, can we have a motion to approve? Second?
Second.
Commissioner Reese, all those in favor? All right. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the public hearing and an adoption of a resolution recommending approval of Eldorado K8 park design. We'll go ahead and open the public hearing on that item. Is there proof of publication for the public hearing?
Yes, there is.
Thank you. Next is presentation. Do we have any presentation by staff?
We will have a presentation. No, Stephen Williams, staff planner. We will have a presentation today by Patrick Hammer, the director of Parks, Recreation, and Open Space. On the agenda item, it's a public hearing and request for PC recommendation regarding the Eldorado K8 site park design.
And good evening, Patrick Hammer, town staff. Thank you for letting me come tonight and review a little bit about this project. And I think maybe the kind of best way to take this apart is I was maybe going to go over a little bit of what the public process was, because that weighs in fairly heavy to what ended up being kind of the park design and where we are now. But at the same time, if we're wanting to jump and look at certain documents, or you guys are having questions, feel free just to ask. I know we threw a lot at you. We'll have a couple of the park master plan, kind of big picture pages to look at, as well as some detail. And I apologize, this graphic here might actually be a little bit grainy, but I believe it was included in your packet. Public process for this project, in some form or fashion, actually started back in 2011 with the members of ProStack. Throughout 2011, 12, 13, staff, members of ProStack worked with consultants from Design Concepts, who ultimately has put this plan together, as well as Chris Strapinski with Greenplay. She's been a consultant that the town has used for a long time on a number of recreation projects. Very, very extensive community engagement. Well over 200 people participated in the engagement process. Members of ProStack actually canvassed the surrounding neighborhoods with door flyers. We spent a great deal of time putting flyer boxes out. We created a website called EngageSuperior.com. And throughout those years of communication with the residents and guidance from the consultants, we started to kind of form what we see here. And I also have a colored version, which may be a little bit easier to see. Is that a little bit easier to see?
It is.
Yes.
A colored version here of the park. And kind of just taking a step back, big picture, you're going to notice a number of kind of key features which have really been a part of this park from the beginning. The most notable is this lower parking loop here. Part of the public engagement process was involving the El Dorado K-8 school and understanding that the town has had issues and the school has had issues with traffic congestion along Indiana. The grade of this portion of the park, and there's an existing access road, utility access road in here, began to lend itself to the possibility of without adding a lot of cost and doing a lot of grading, the opportunity to add in a parking loop, which could serve as a drop-off area for the school as well as a parking amenity for what would become the playground. The other kind of key features that have always been a part of this park was some kind of great lawn. And a great lawn that would exist, think more along the lines of Purple Park and less like Community Park. An area that would probably not be programmed. It wouldn't be striped with soccer fields. It wouldn't be lined with football fields. But it would be a place that would be flat. It'd be a place that you could run your dog. You could play football. You could play baseball. But at the same time, you wouldn't really have to worry too much about showing up on a Saturday and having soccer games from 8 in the morning until 4 or 5 in the afternoon. And then some area of active play, but again on a drop-in basis. The members of ProStack for years have had amenity prioritization list, trying to identify amenities in town that would be beneficial to add. 2 amenities that continue to come up on that were outdoor basketball and sand volleyball. So incorporating those 2 elements into the park, some kind of older age play feature. This here is what we would call a net climber. So not your traditional kind of swings and playground and younger kid kind of features, knowing that right over here at the school you would have those play amenities, but something a little bit outside of the box that would maybe attract older kids. So net climber here. Restroom facility, year-round restroom facility, which has become fairly standard in the town, located here. Some type of community gathering space, large community gathering space. So a pavilion here that would be able to fit, I'd say probably 6 to 8 picnic tables. Probably a little bit bigger than what you see currently over at Founders Park. A concrete walking loop. And then up here, a really kind of focal point, taking advantage of the existing grade. That was something that we, the designers and the committee, were fairly consistent with, is not wanting to lose a lot of the park amenities by having to grade a lot of this. It's an awkward shape. We've got the really aggressive slope coming off of Indiana. But using that to our advantage and maybe coming up with an overlook here. So an octagon-shaped pavilion that would look out, across the open space towards the east. And then maybe some pergola style, what we call wing walls, which could be dual purpose. It definitely makes an aesthetic statement, but at the same time, if we were to have a concert in the park, or if you had multiple families up here who maybe wanted to kind of separate out for picnics, you would be able to use this space up here. And then the remaining portions of the park, this kind of lighter area, what we would just consider the town's irrigated native open space, fairly consistent to what you would see probably along Colton Road and areas like that, where it's not your manicured turf, playing turf, but it is well-kept native seed, and then landscape buffering as much as possible, again, using kind of the existing topography. This is actually a slope, sloping from the houses down towards the park. We're really making sure that we're providing an aesthetically pleasing buffer in this area here. So big picture, that's really kind of the meat and potatoes and the character of the park. Again, that community engagement process that took place, we were really looking for majority consensus. Up until very recently, some of the amenities were located over here. We accepted public feedback during board meetings up through April, May. We had a board meeting a couple months ago. Continued to hear about moving amenities further this way while keeping the integrity of the flat park. So being able to move these amenities even a little bit further north and east from these homes, just again trying to get that majority consensus and really create a great amenity for that south side of Colton Road. Is there a particular plan that you guys would like me to hop to next? Or I know that I believe you guys have with you the design set as well as the overall park site plan, but I'm really willing to kind of answer questions or re-review or talk about the process as you guys see fit.
Does anybody have any questions they'd like to raise with staff?
Sure.
Commissioner Reese?
Do you have a grading plan?
Yeah, let me.
I think I saw it on there somewhere.
Yep, and it may probably be towards the front of your packet there. Fairly minimal grading.
So that's fine right there, I believe. So you're saying on the east end of the project along Indiana, right there, it's a significant drop-off, correct?
Significant, correct.
And so any kind of utilization of that space would require a lot more extensive grading, retaining walls.
Correct.
So that's why there was no planning for that area.
Correct. Previous iterations of this, we had actually explored using this for parking and trying to focus the parking over here, maybe kind of extending this kind of hug-and-go lane that has occurred over the years. And once we were able to kind of wrap our heads around the cost to terrace that and put walls, it really became, our project budget would quickly be absorbed by that. This project is budgeted at just about $3 million. This parking option here was close to $1 million in and of itself. And really the rest of the park, we wanted to try to just, it's a great space if you haven't actually been on there. It's fairly flat and lends itself really well to being a park site. And if you can kind of work with this existing berm, it's an unnatural berm. Our assumption is that it was probably soils from when homes were built. So you can tell that the area isn't natural, but it does lend itself to a nice flat park space. Everything generally drains in this direction, down towards this pond. This urban drainage potential down here.
And I think the thought of where the parking is and how it works well with the school, I think that's a great idea instead of having it at the far end. I'm just looking at and we received feedback from the community about the basketball courts and
Correct.
everything being closer to the houses. What's the distance currently on this plan from the basketball court to the back of the houses to the west on Opal?
Look, I want to say that.
You
Want to
talk
say
about
that we're
right
over
there.
Yes.
the 100 and some feet there. I think we're in excess of 100 feet when we did our last measurements, and that's absolutely something I could get the very specific detail on that.
I'm just trying to determine, because I like the layout of the plan, the basketball court and the volleyball court, if those were to be swapped, then the basketball court then becomes, what's the distance from the basketball court to the houses to the north,
Yeah,
across
but-
Torrey's Peak? I mean, that's the difference,
Right. You're correct, and hopefully working with this berm, it's a decent drop from the back of the homes down into this kind of corner out here, as well as this location. There's a pretty good drop, and we have worked with Design Concepts to identify plant material, including these larger trees in this area here, and it's something that's come up as of late, as we've seen the soils report. We are potentially going to need to do some over excavating here, which would lend itself to adding a couple more berms in here to continue to try to deflect sound as much as possible. As you can imagine, the soils in this area are sandy like everywhere else, and adding in a restroom and pavilions is going to lend itself to us needing to over excavate a little bit. And being able to use that soil on site to create some additional berming is something that I think we're looking into.
And then, as a comment to piggyback on your comments and your questions, that your intent by doing this is from community feedback about noise
Correct.
and trying to abate the noise from the basketball field, the court.
Correct. And as well, I don't know if it probably wasn't all that easy to pick up on, but this is an unlit park, including the parking lot. And those were very intentional actions, wanting to recognize the impact of having a new park amenity next to homes. We have tried to be very mindful of not obstructing views. A lot of times we hear about people wanting to preserve views to the west. On this project, we have a good number of people who are wanting to preserve views to the east. It's a good view. And things like eliminating parking lot lighting, or exploring low-level bollard lighting is something that we've looked at with this parking lot. But those are all very intentional, trying to recognize the community's concerns in those areas.
As far as the plantings go, are these evergreens that you're putting here?
Correct.
Okay, so there's going to be some visual screen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And as of a couple months ago, we did also have some community members who we're going to try to work with who were a little concerned about overplanting and creating so much of a screen. So I think there will be probably a little bit of give and take with some of the larger pine trees, and then moving down into more ornamental down in this area here, and then maybe envisioning kind of shrubs and grass that would potentially dense, that would deaden sound the closer we get to the amenities themselves. As well as we've also looked at, maybe some plant enhancements over here, also recognizing that there's a fair amount of noise that comes from the existing school site. So really being able to even buffer a little bit kind of over in this area. This would be the connectivity path. I apologize I didn't mention that in the initial presentation. But some kind of basic connectivity trail coming from the end of the parking lot here and then cutting over to what would be the edge of the school property is also something that's incorporated into this plan.
And is that there is an existing cut through there, right? There's an existing trail.
I believe there is a social trail there.
Yeah.
At one point, we had maybe had this located a little bit further down, and after we had done the flow analysis of water that could potentially flow into this site, it was recommended that we move that back and formalize the trail here in the event that this were to ever take on water as it's designed. And then continuing to work with the school for some, sorry, my mouse is a little bit slow here. Continuing to work with the school. Early conversations with them indicated, maybe they would have a staff person that would be in this area. That way you would have visual alignment for parents dropping the child off all the way over to where that child would interact with their school teacher.
Any other questions?
I have a
Commissioner
question.
Harden?
You said there's no lighting in the parking lot?
Correct.
What about on the trails? Are those going to be the low level?
Right now there is not. There will be pavilion lighting, but we do not have planned in the low-level bollard lighting at this point. We have talked about making sure that we will have some utility runs that will come in here to furnish the bathroom. So in the future, there would be the ability to at least have the electricity there to put it in. But right now there is not. Would have probably one overhead light here, and then probably an overhead light here, similar to what we have currently at Purple Park. And again, I apologize. Another key feature, and thank you, Phyllis, for bringing that up, is an entryway point. Since this is a larger park, it's a 12-acre park, working with the designers to have some kind of monumentation wall, similar to what we have at Purple, the sandstone idea, maybe kind of the sloped sandstone in this area here, with electricity, something that can maybe be added to our holiday lighting in the winter. And then being able to take and run utilities up the hill and down to the restroom, which sits about here.
The current basketball court that's over off of Indiana and Colton, that's not lit either, right?
I believe it has a couple of parking lot
Parking lot
lights
lights.
to the east of that court.
Okay.
On the east of the bollards, we put the stone barriers.
Yeah, Patrick's correct. The court itself isn't lit.
Right.
It's the parking area next to the court is lit.
And we did something. Sorry, go ahead, Jim.
Oh, no. No,
I was going to
please.
say we did something kind of similar at Founders Park. That idea of lighting parks is kind of a double-edged sword. Safety wise, you love it. Visual for the people surrounding it, you tend to hate it. And we've already had conversations with Boulder County Sheriff's Department about, being able to drive in and this pavilion light, being able to visually see kind of in a drive-by, up to the restroom and over here, just using, maybe the existing light that's on the facilities themselves.
Patrick, are the other restroom facilities like in Purple Park or Community Park, are those year-round facilities?
They are. They haven't always been, but over the last handful of years, we've worked to include the heaters. There's actually kind of a chase room right in between the men's and women's separation, and we've been able to put heaters in there, and then our staff maintains those throughout the year. The most recent one that we put in at Autry Park was the whole kit came and had the heater with it, and they, based off of our janitorial fees, they get used. So,
All right.
yeah.
Irrigation for the park, is it going to be standard through all of the planted area, or is it just going to be out in the grass area, or no irrigation?
No, so we'll have, scoot back here to the color version. Manicured green grass here, this would be sod off the get-go, not opting for seed that would take time to establish. So pretty aggressive irrigation in here, making sure that we had significant coverage. And then really in this kind of native area, rotors that would just kind of do broad broadcasting of water. And then when we get down into these areas, and some of these maybe tree spots, really just relying on drip irrigation. Again, with the sandy soils, being really, really cognizant of not wanting to overwater, not creating any heaving issues. Really minimal in here, a little more aggressive, and really minimal, again, on this hillside.
Yeah, I think my concern, the reason I asked is because the plantings between the houses and the park, or the basketball and the climbing structure, the cargo net structure, you know, it'll be critical for the people who are in those houses that those plants be established and be able to survive and everything. So I just want to make sure that that's taken into account, that it's significant irrigation for those plantings.
Absolutely. I'll make
One of the comments we received from community feedback was, I guess, more along the lines of a question: why couldn't we move these things all the way over to the other end? And I'm assuming that's probably something that was looked at during the course of the process. Could you give us some insight into that?
You are correct. Several iterations of this design, again going back to kind of 2011, 2012, had shown, maybe the basketball court even in this area. There was a divide at one point. At one point we had community gardens and a building, a community building over here. And I think through the community process, hearing that the community south of Colton wanting and needing kind of a large open space, and being able to design a park that took advantage of the topography as much as possible without the grading, it lent itself to keep the green space further on the east side, and then being able to tuck these amenities into the existing hillside. But Jim, you're absolutely correct. It's been shown in various stages all over the place. Over the last 3 years, it's been pretty consistent with the amenities on the left-hand western side.
And looking at the cover memo that you all produced, which was very helpful, by the way, as I understand it, there have been several meetings, community outreach meetings. I mean, you spoke to that a bit, but formal engagement meetings at El Dorado, for instance, and places like that.
You are correct. I believe August, maybe I think I have the day. I think August 2013. One of our most well-attended meetings was actually at the El Dorado K School, and involved the staff from El Dorado as well. And at that time, the members of ProStack had agreed and volunteered to kind of broadcast around that neighborhood with door hangers. Members of ProStack also made themselves available to answer questions and take comments for those that couldn't go to the meeting, trying to really get that as close to consensus as possible, which is difficult to do for a park. But this one, over the course of years, has seen a lot of public comment. It's been discussed at ProStack as well as at the board meetings.
I was going to say, you mentioned that the ProStack members were available for public comment outside of the meetings. Do we have any understanding of how many people contacted the ProStack members to discuss it or from a feedback standpoint individually? Because, if people aren't able to make meetings, we say that the ProStack members made themselves available.
Right.
I would just like to understand if we did have reach out from the community to the ProStack members outside of the meetings.
Yeah, I don't have an exact number for you. To be honest, I don't recall it being a really huge number. I think as they were kind of doing the door-to-door, they were offering to take comment right there. My guess is that it was probably less than 5. We did keep that documentation. At each step of this process, design concepts and green play kept summary notes from all the community meetings, and you could over time see how the design really evolved based off of public comment, then mixed with design elements of how you actually produce a park. So that kind of tricky point of, okay, you've got the public feedback now, how do you actually build it? And it took a while. It took a while to kind of land at this design here. And I didn't include it in your packet, but I do have, we've been very diligent about tracking and keeping public comment, particular to this public engagement, as well as the parcels 1 and 2 in Town Center and Founders Park. ProStack has a very thorough public engagement process that's been successful for the town.
Has there been any kind of an analysis of what the park what effect it would have on property values for adjacent homes?
Not that I'm aware of.
Could be positive, could be negative. We just don't know.
Correct, yeah.
Okay. And go ahead. I'm sorry. Just one final. I'm
Sure.
sorry to hog the time here.
Oh, absolutely.
One of the comments or concerns I think we received was, how long would it take for the, the barrier, the trees and things to mature to the point where they would actually be effective? Do you know whether the plan is to plant, semi-mature trees versus tiny little shrubs or?
Yeah, we do. The town has specific requirements on material that needs to go in. The larger trees will need to be established pine trees that will have drip irrigation running to them. It'll probably take a couple of years for them to get to that, 13, 14, 15-foot height, but they'll be robust, healthy trees. The more deciduous trees have to be a 2-inch caliper tree. We also require that everything's got a 2-year warranty period. So if material's faulty within that 2 years, that's the contractor's on the hook to come out and replace that material. And that actually goes for everything inside this park. Everything will be on a 2-year warranty period. Pavilions, play features, restrooms, that's a standard that the town follows pretty strictly. But they'll be decent trees, but it'll take a couple years for them to kind of get to that 13, 14-foot height.
Okay, thanks. Commissioner Harden?
Could you show me again where the shelters are?
Yep.
And how big are those?
Yeah. So kind of a square shelter down here. Probably about, decent size. I think we're talking probably about 26 feet, so a little bit bigger than Founders Park. Enough to fit, 6 to 8 tables in there.
Oh, that's.
Pretty decent size, and then really getting up here to the octagon shape, you're looking at 30. With these kind of wing pergolas being an additional probably 7 foot wide, with a curve probably 30 feet. This is actually a pretty good stretch in here. If we're looking at this kind of measure here is 100 feet comparatively, this is a pretty good run up here. Kind of another unique design aspect that we run into with this steep hillside and a flat playing surface, there is designed in, I guess for lack of better words, a decorative fence. We're wanting to keep this really aesthetically pleasing as the kind of marquee for the park, but also understanding that if this is going to be an active play area, you could potentially have balls that would be flying that way. You could have people wanting to turn that into a sledding hill, but creating some kind of separation. This is, as everybody knows, a really busy street. So to have active play and a really aggressive slope, it is a bit of a design challenge to put something in other than a chain link fence, which I don't think anybody would be happy with. So maybe a fence here with some kind of stone dividers, and have that stone match the aesthetics of our 2 pavilions is a way to kind of tie it all together.
So that is, you're just talking like a fence, it's not like a seating wall where where you can
Right.
sit on it, which
We had considered that and
and
that
drives the price
cost.
up. Yeah.
But above a chain link fence, going back to Founders Park, we thought we were going to be able to kind of get away with using plant material as a buffer between the basketball court and Coal Creek. I think within 2 weeks, we knew that you needed a fence. That kind of active play, whether it's a soccer ball or a Frisbee or a kid who's just running, we wanted to err on the side of safety there. While still keeping this a good look as you're driving up Indiana, making sure that this really looks aesthetically pleasing.
So outside of that, down in the retention area, the pond area, is that just going to remain native the way that it is today? There's no plans on
Correct.
improvements? Okay.
Yep.
If hypothetically we flip the location of basketball and volleyball to the east,
Mm-hmm.
what's that going to do to the flat area?
I think other than breaking it up, it would probably it would reduce it.
Right.
It would just make it a little bit smaller.
Right, so flipping it would shrink the flat area, basically. And then also flipping it would take you away from that loop, for want of a better word, where you have the extra parking, which I presume that you set it up that way so that there's a little more parking at the activity end of things.
You're absolutely correct. Same with the location of the pavilion. Knowing if somebody were to come to play ball or have a birthday party or something, being able to have the drop-off area and get to it with kids or a stroller or a wagon with a cooler in it. And that is something that we've discussed here as well, is it is going to be a little bit of a draw to get from here to walk up the hill. And we know that that's something that we'll probably encounter and have to deal with. The early concepts even had some cut across stairs, but again, due to cost and cutting into that hillside, it just was starting to eat up so much of the budget.
I think my thought was the same, as if you move the basketball and volleyball all the way to the east side, what would that leave you with? And I was like, you would have the same amount of grass area, would just be shifted, but then your walkway that comes through, you would have a walkway right through the middle of your play area. And to shift the sidewalk then renders that walkway really useless, because it's the way that it's laid out now, coming off of the north side.
Yeah.
Yeah, that entrance and
Torrey's.
coming in, if it
West
wound up
Torrey's.
going to the other side, it just,
Mhm.
it doesn't work, so.
Yeah. And another element is that I again neglected to mention early is parallel parking down in here, trying to really optimize as much parking as possible, and then putting the parking on the southern side of the road. That way you don't have kids potentially getting out of a car up here and darting across, eliminating the sidewalk, which was helpful. It allowed potentially for us to not have to do a retaining wall, and then keeping kids on the southern side of that parking, keeping them closer to the school, keeping line of sight a little bit cleaner, was a design element too that I neglected to mention earlier.
Yeah, Patrick, I am glad you brought that part up too, because as I look at the design, I really like how this park is laid out. And I think it really, for me, it makes a lot of sense to keep things the way that they are. I have to really wonder how much noise is going to be generated, especially during the week when it's probably not going to be used very frequently. I mean, it'll get some usage, but probably not like on the weekends.
Yeah.
However, though, I wondered if there are some conditional or additional concerns around having parking along that street as students leave El Dorado K-8, and if there are any other safety issues that we need to address and look at by having the parking so close to where the students are going back and forth.
Yeah. I think something that we've also started to kind of figure out is this cut across here will probably start to become the main cut across for all the residents in this, you know, eliminating them coming down here. So I do think some of that, the foot traffic flow that we're seeing here, will probably start to migrate over here. And we've also, you know, the idea of maybe social trails even developing as kids may not want to come up here. I think once we see those patterns and the natural usage of those students, we'll start to gain a little bit more insight. But I do think that this will become it's my understanding that the younger kids kind of occupy the back of the school here, and you know, maybe kind of having this become that hug and go, and then some of the kids being able to walk from the homes here, I think is a reality with this park plan.
But I think, oh, sorry.
I was going to say, I like that feature of the hug and go because of the traffic on Indiana coming into El Dorado K through 8. It's tremendous. And to have that loop there would be a great relief to the traffic and the parents coming and going.
Mm-hmm.
But one issue then that creates is that entrance, you know, all of a sudden now you've got the kids who are walking up Indiana, and then you have another point of traffic coming in and out. It's something that's going to have to be considered as well. And I don't know if I know the school is very short on volunteers for the traffic already, but I wonder, you know, if they would have to have another person there at that point.
You bring up a great point, and we've also had some initial discussions with even our own public works about, are there some things that we can do signage-wise here, and even maybe into the existing median. I think as we look at this area from a bigger transportation kind of perspective, making sure that signage is there. There's been some recommendations of maybe, you know, you kind of do the turn in and turn out, and it's all kind of coordinated in one direction. For that very reason, you do create another point here where students are going to cross. So you'll have the existing parking lot, a crossing point, and potentially another crossing point. And we have had initial, very preliminary conversations with our public works guys talking about effective signage.
Yeah, it's almost like if at the end of or during the school times that you make that a left turn only coming out of there, but then I'm sure they'll come up with some solutions.
Any additional questions, comments? Commissioner Stewart.
So in terms of construction, what kind of time frame are we looking at? And will it be completed in steps and phases, or? how
Right
would you
now,
go about
this project is entirely budgeted to be constructed next year. As we're kind of moving through this process, once we get to 100% construction documents, staff plans to put this out to a construction bid as early as January, evaluate those bids and bring a contract forward to the board and really mobilize and build as soon as possible. But the board, I believe, would like to see this built not in phases and get it done in 1 year and try to address some of the expectations of the residents who have been a part of this process for a long time and kind of learning what we've learned from Founders and some other projects is you can build things in phases, but sometimes you get it and then it stalls out and it gets kind of piecemeal. And I think the board was really wanting to get this done and done in a quick time frame, avoiding that phasing.
Sounds good. Anything else? Okay, well, thanks, Patrick.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I guess at this point, we want to know if there's anyone in the audience who wishes to comment. Doesn't appear to be. I have a question for our attorney. We all received an email from a resident concerning this, and my inclination would be to make the email a part of the public comment. Would that be appropriate?
Absolutely. You could even read it into the record if you wanted.
It's 2 pages.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, you don't have to then.
I'd rather not if I can avoid, but I will.
Efficient.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you know, this resident indicates that she and her family have a home on Opal that backs to the park, and that she has concerns about the proximity of the basketball court really to those homes. And I think that the issues she identified as most concerning were noise pollution and mitigation, concerns about what effect that this project would have in general on the property values. And that's basically the gist of what the comments are. But if we can make the entire email part of the record, I think that might be helpful.
Absolutely, and your summary comments are good here on the oral record of the meeting.
Okay. All right. Well, I think at this point, we can go ahead and close the public hearing. So, discussions. Commissioner Reese?
I think it's a great plan, you know, and I fully understand, you know, the residents' concerns for noise. I look at the overall plan. I tried to figure out how they could have done something different by moving the courts to the east end. But, you know, with Patrick's explanation of I think the critical point here is that the connector between the parking lot and the school, and then also that north entry into the park and that sidewalk that leads down to that entry point are going to be critical parts of this project. And it's not even the use of it's not even part of the actual, like, the park itself. The use of the park is going to provide more of a, you know, just a thoroughfare for the kids, which then becomes an active part of the park, because when they're leaving school to go home, they end up spending more time in the park. So I think that the entire layout of this is very well thought out. If we were to move these parts down here, then all of a sudden this concrete path winds up being in the way of a vast open manicured lawn for playing, and then we run into issues with people trying to play across the sidewalk if they're playing soccer or whatever they're doing. So I think the town staff and the contractors that they've utilized have done a very thorough job in this.
Other comments?
I'd have to comment that ProStack and their director, Patrick Hammer, have really taken the community's comments to heart in coming up with this drawing. I've seen earlier iterations of this where the basketball court is closer to Opal, the homes on Opal, and you know, if not from the comments of the community that you've gone through over the last several years, have said move that stuff further away from our homes. The letter from the resident that you referenced, Jim, one of their issues is that they suffer from migraine headaches, and the noise would bother them. And I think we heard that. I think you heard that. And you've designed it so that it gets mitigated as much as possible while the rest of the park can function. And you know, we're not going to spend $1 million on building a wall and then drop a penny or a nickel on the rest of the park. And so I think, you know, moving the basketball court and the volleyball court to the other side and bringing in that wall and that construction, it just doesn't make financial sense for the good of the park. And so to hear the residents and move those amenities, the basketball court and the volleyball court, as far away from them as possible while still having a functional design, I think you nailed it.
I think it's a very, very balanced park. Anything, you have extra parking where the activities are, you save $1 million by putting it at that end as opposed to the other end. It's visually and aesthetically pleasing. And I don't mean to sound like negative, but you're not going to ever have a situation where you please 100% of the people. You're trying to please as many as possible and get the maximum use out of what you have. I think that has to be the goal, and I think they've got it.
One other comment I'd like to throw in. I live at 2255 Andrew Drive, which is right up the hill from the basketball court at Colton in Indiana. And I use that court frequently with my kids, and I drive by it all the time. And it's never crowded. It's never overflowing. The parking lot is sometimes full with hikers and bikers that are out on the trails, but the basketball court will be empty.
Mhm.
So it gets a lot of use, but not tremendous noisy use. And there's a home right across, there's several homes on Clayton Circle right across from that park. So, you know, I think the use of this basketball court would probably receive the same amount of use.
I think that's probably true, and I think the same is true of the sand volleyball court up at Purple Park. It gets use, but it's certainly not daily.
Yeah.
You know, maybe once or twice a week, it seems somebody's out there. So. Any additional comments?
Yes, I would agree with my fellow commissioners here. I think and I said this earlier, it's a good design. It's well laid out. I think that it would be a tremendous addition to the community, and I think that a lot of people would benefit from having that there, in that location, in that with the current design. I can't get past one thing though, and that is the entrance there on Indiana. And I drive Indiana a lot, and there are times of the day where that is very busy. And I really think that, you know, we need to look at some security or some safety features there to make sure that particularly the little ones are protected.
Mm-hmm.
I say that only because I've seen the parking lot at El Dorado K-8, and I know how many students have been hit there or had their feet run over. And there are plenty of people around to kind of watch that. And so, having said that, I think that it would, for me, one of the things that might work would be having a crossing guard there, someone to direct the traffic, just to kind of reduce some of the possibilities of accidents there. So just some more safety features there. Maybe signage would be a good idea. And I think you mentioned that, Mr. Hammer, earlier, some signage there. But otherwise, I do agree with everyone else that the design is good, and it looks very functional from what we're seeing there.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Harden?
I agree. I think it's a great plan. I think a lot of thought, extreme amount of thought has gone into this with all of the community meetings. And I know the consultants have drawn it, redrawn it, or redrawn it again. And what they've come up with is a good plan, I believe.
Thank you. I would just echo basically everything that our fellow commissioners have said. I mean, I think it's a great design. Patrick, appreciate the hard work that you and your team have put into all of this over the years. And I think you've come up with something that looks like it would be a great amenity to the community. It's out of my wheelhouse to say, but my belief would be that property values would increase because of an amenity like this in that area where it's now kind of just an empty field and really isn't being used by anybody for anything. I'm glad to hear that, you know, quite a bit of thought has been given to creating a buffer, or maybe that's a dirty word these days, creating some sort of screening in between the homes on Opal and the court there. It looks to me like the distance between the basketball court and the back of the lots on Opal is not too far from it's pretty close to the same distance to the homes over there on West Torrey's. So it seems like a pretty fair placement. And with the amount of plantings and everything else that are being contemplated and the berming, I think, most likely that's not going to be much of an issue either visually or from a sound standpoint for any of those people. At least I hope not, so. I'm very much in favor of it, so. Any further discussions or comments? Well, I think at this point then, the appropriate thing would be to entertain a motion to approve the resolution that's before us. And that's recommending the approval of the plan and recommending that the board move forward with approval. I don't know if we want to put any conditions on that. I don't know of any, but does anybody have any that they want to add to that? Hearing none. Could we have a motion to approve the resolution that's before us?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the resolution number PC-5, Series 2015.
Commissioner Malia?
It's a resolution of the Planning Commission of the Town of Superior recommending approval of the El Dorado K-8 Park Plan.
Second?
Second.
Commissioner Reese? All
I
those in-
make one comment. Can we take section 1 out of this resolution?
That's appropriate.
I'm sorry, fellas, what?
Take section 1
Section 1 out?
completely out.
Oh, take section 1 completely out, yeah, I agree.
And
Oh.
make section 2 section 1.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Okay. Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you.
Next item is staff announcements and miscellaneous. Do we have any?
I guess the only thing I would announce is that we did have a second agenda item that was scheduled for tonight, and it was actually scheduled for, I think, the end of November as well. And we plan on hearing that on the 5th of January. It's for a commercial sign at Rock Creek Village. So I guess just a heads up that we'll likely have that planning commission meeting on January 5th.
Okay, thanks, Stephen.
Sure.
Any other business to come before the meeting? If not, we're adjourned.